Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Dotzy, and today we're going to be talking about the Girthquake build. And I've spent a lot of time kind of putting this together. It's got a couple of different variations and a couple of different cool things we're going to be talking about today. So let's dive right in. So, the Girthquake build. Today we're going to be kind of going over exactly what it is, how it works, and the different variants that are currently correlated with it that I'm currently working on. So as of right now, we have an endgame and then a pits endgame version. We're going to start off by going over the endgame version first. As you can see on the build guide, which I'll also have a link to that in the description below, so make sure you check that out. Do me a favor, make sure you check out the skill tree and all of the assigned skills, because these are going to be super important for making sure you have the right stuff on. I've already had a couple people tell me like, hey, what aspects do I use? And I'm just like, these ones. The ones that are right here. But that's neither here nor there. Let's go ahead and let's dive right in. So we're going to be starting off. We will need, for the first variant, you'll need Shaco, Harlequin Crest. Ideally, you want to get it in cooldown. At the time, I only had one with max life GA, so that's what I put in the build. You will need a Mantle of Mountain's Fury. Ideally, you'll want one with a chance for Earthquake to deal double damage, because that's where we're really going to, you know, be able to double dip into our damage, as it were. Fist of Fate. These are kind of particular because you want high lucky hit chance, but you don't necessarily need it to be GA'd. Crit chance and attack speed, I feel, are more important. But the most important is getting the 300%. So if you have a 300% roll Fist of Fates, even if they have a bad roll, put them on. They'll be worth having rather than running like a 250. Ariat's Bearing. Now for this variant, ideally you'll want a GA and cooldown reduction or resistance to all. Because on this variant we are using Call of the Ancients. On your boots, and we're going to be running the aspect of concussive strikes. Now you can also use exploiters. It's kind of dealer's choice. On this variant we're going to be tempering Dust Devil size and movement speed, and the suffixes you're going to want on it are movement speed, fury per second, and strength. If you can get a GA in strength and movement speed, that's awesome. It would be a lot better to have the GA movement speed if you have one. Then on our first weapon, we're going to have strength, max life, crit damage. That's just kind of going to be the standard as we go across all of the weapons. On your two-handed bludgeoning, which is the one we're talking about here, you're going to want incendiary fissures. This is going to give you that chance to get that heavy multiplier for your earthquake damage, and they're also converting it to fire damage as well. It's going to be really important. For tempering, you want a chance for earthquakes to cast twice, and the offensive temper of damage while berserking. We need to make sure we at least hit that 45, that 45x on our blood rage board. In order to do that, you have to have at least 450% damage while berserking. Right now I'm at like 445. On your next weapon, it's going to be aspect of the aspect of the fierce winds. It'll be strength, max life, and critical strike damage. On this one, we're going to have damage to close and bonus to heavy hitter, and you want every single roll to hit heavy hitter, because that's where it's really going to juice our damage, and I'll explain why once we go over our skill tree. On our two-handed slashing weapon, we want aspect of the earthquakes with strength, max life, and critical strike damage. And again, we want a triple crit into bonus to heavy hitter. We want at least get 12 ranks there. 10 is ideal, 12 is perfect. Also temper that with damage to close. And I'll explain why we're using damage to close as well once we get into our Paragon board. And then on our second sword, it'll be strength, max life, and crit with bonus to heavy hitter and another damage to close. We need to make sure we are tempering damage to close. We don't necessarily need the highest rank, but we need to make sure we have it. And then of course, triple crit into heavy hitter. This should give you, I believe, 7 if you hit all of them. I've only double crit on mine. On your amulet, ideally in a perfect world, you'll want strength, heavy-handed, and counter-offensive. I understand how hard this is to find, how hard it is to roll. So if you can at least get strength and heavy-handed, those are the most important priority on the amulet. Counter-offensive is very helpful. It would be great to have all three, but if you can't, because drops or RNG is just horrible, whatever the case may be, just bear that in mind. The next thing is we're going to be tempering on this one, Call of the Ancients cooldown reduction. However, if you want to be proactive, if your Ariat's Bearing is already GA'd in Call of the Ancients cooldown, you will not need Call of the Ancients cooldown reduction on your amulet. So you can either set it to Wrath of the Berserker, or you can set it for like your Brawling cooldown. And then obviously we want to get Girthquake size as well. For the bold chieftains, you want crit chance, lucky hit to make vulnerable. This is important. We don't naturally make vulnerable, so having that lucky hit and a G8 one at that would be ideal. I lucked out. I happened to come across one. I have like 96% chance to make vulnerable. It's super important. It really helps us in dealing that high damage output more often. When they're vulnerable, we do more damage. And instead of brawling cooldown on here, I would recommend doing Wrath of the Berserker, because this will prep you for the pit pushing variant. And then instead of damage to close, if you've already put damage to close on all of these, do damage while berserking, so make sure you can get that extra damage. I've kind of mixed and matched some gear, so my gear may look a little bit different than what I'm recommending here, so just make sure to follow the planner. For the weapon runes, you want Bach and Jaw. Now, instead of using Jaw, if you don't have one, you can also use a Gar. Jaw will give you the ability to make your evade teleport. Gar basically increases your critical strike chance, which is good if you don't have a lot of crit chance. For your other weapon, you're going to want Igni and Tech. What that means is every time you tap Whirlwind, it's going to be proccing earthquakes beneath your feet. The faster you hit, the higher your attack speed, the more earthquakes, the more damage, and so on and so forth. As far as our witchcraft, we're going to be using Piranha, Hex of Shattering. On this build, Hex of Shattering, Aura Specialization, Aura of Siphoning, Hex of Whispers, and Soul Harvest. However, if you want to be proactive, you can remove Hex of Shattering and put on Hex Specialization instead. For our weapons, we'll be using emeralds. Armor, we'll be using rubies. We'll be using Friend of the Bog, Duststone, and you can use Toadling's Wish. I didn't bother putting 3 because I know I've been struggling with getting witchcraft and doing all the headless rot, or restless rot rather, so I can understand if you guys won't even get it. I'm currently in my build, I have 1, and that's Friend of the Bog right now, and I'm hitting well over trillions. So these are going to be great going down the line, but if you don't have them right now, I'll put some recommendations in the description. So if you guys have any questions, also feel free to join the Discord. We have a lot of open floor conversations where we talk about the build and like different recommendations or things to try. But that will be it. And then the gameplay loop is pretty simple. Hit shouts on CD, pop coda, which is called the Ancients, and then spin, 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 tap, 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 tap. And then once you get a good amount of earthquakes on the ground, smack coda, explosions go everywhere. And later in the video, I'll give you guys an example of how this looks. It'll more than likely be on this second variant that we're going to go over right now. So real quick, while we're looking at the skill tree, this is still for the end game build. Taking Bash is just because we need to get 2 to get to this area. We put 1 into Hoda going all the way up. We put 1 into Whirlwind, and then we get Enhanced Whirlwind. Then we go down. We do take Ground Stomp, but we don't use it. It's kind of just there just in case. It's good for bossing for those 1 hits. Then we grabbing Imposing Presence, Martial Vigor, Rallying Cry, taking it all the way to Strategic. We grab Outburst and Tough as Nails, and then we have Challenging Shout and Enhanced Challenging Shout. Take that down to put 5 in War Cry, all the way to Power War Cry. We grab Booming Voice and Guttural Yell. This is going to help with the damage reduction for sure. We grab Swiftness for that movement speed, and then we grab Aggressive Resistance and Prolific Fury. This is going to give us more Fury generation. Since we're not going to be generating a whole lot, it will definitely help while we're Berserk. Then we grab 3 into No Mercy, 3 into Pit Fighter, 3 into Slaying Strike. We grab 1 into Thick Skin, 1 into Defensive Stance, and 3 into Counter Offensive. We grab 5 into Call of the Ancients, all the way up to Supreme. The reason we're grabbing all of these is not only to get the additional bonus, which is more movement speed and distant damage reduction, but also for every rank we have, it gives us cooldown. So that is in fact huge. The next thing is we grab Unconstrained. Now, this Paragon board is going to look a little different. This one I stopped at a 274. In the first board, we grab Rumble, then we grab Ire, and this is going to be on the Blood Rage board. Then we grab Warbringer and we use Wrath. Then we grab the Marshal on the Force of Nature. And the reason we grab the Force of Nature node and the reason that we're tempering to damage to close is just for this reason. Damage to close multiplier, it goes up to times 200. That is a massive damage buff. So getting those damage to close buffs for Force of Nature is huge for making our earthquake damage even more stronger. Then we grab the twister glyph and the last one, and this is going to be with the decimator. Now the overpowering portion is not really going to make a difference, but each time we make an enemy vulnerable, our damage is increased by 20x for 5 seconds. That's why we have the chance, the lucky hit to make vulnerable, because we're going to need it to get that extra damage buff. It's a huge part of the build. It's definitely important. Going on to the pit variant, we are going to be using the Ugly Bastard Helm, Mantle of Mountain's Fury, Fist of Fate, Ariad's Bearing. However, on this version's Ariad's Bearing, we're not worried about the GA and Call of the Ancients, where we want ultimate skill damage, max life, and resistance to all. This is an easy way to cap your resistances and increase the damage of your Wrath of the Berserker. This is a huge buff. Make sure to try to roll that if you can. Lord Zier is the one who drops his pants. I don't like the way I said that. As far as all of these, they are the same with the exception of this sword. Instead of it being Fierce Winds, it is now Vehement Brawlers. And this is what will give us even more cooldown on Wrath of the Berserker, because each time we cast it, it gives us an additional 2 ranks. 2 ranks for 8 seconds gives us more CDR. It's a really good thing to have. And then obviously being able to tempering the Wrath of the Berserker cooldown is going to be ideal. I'll even actually update this here while we're live, and I'm going to make sure that we change this to Wrath of the Berserker, just so you guys have it. And we don't even need to roll crit chance. Ideally, we want all 3 here. And then for this one, we're going to put Wrath of the Berserker as well. And in a perfect world, we could roll all 3 right into Wrath of the Berserker. And that should give you right around, if you triple crit your helm, which gives you Wrath of the Berserker cooldown, your ring, and your amulet, you should be right at the 75% cap. So your cooldown should be around 11 seconds, and it lasts 8 seconds. So you only have like a 2-second disparity where you're not in Wrath. So that's a huge buff. Secondly, like I was talking about, we're using Hex specialization here instead. Kind of going over some of the strengths and weaknesses. Let's go ahead and look at that now. So some of the key strengths are your fast. Barbillions on almost every single hit. Barbillions, baby. But that isn't even the tip of the iceberg. We hit bar trillions, and it's absolutely insane. It's great for pit, great for speed farming, and it's just great for farming. Definitely good to have. Next, when your controller dies, if your hand cramps, and the occasional dyslexia, don't judge me. So that's just the kind of short and skinny of what we have here. I'm going to cut over to some gameplay that I have, and we're going to go ahead and check that out really quick. All right, so we're heading over to Kyovashad now. What we're going to do is we're going to show some footage of the testing center and what exactly we're going to be doing against some elites, and then we'll go into as you can see, those are some trillions popping. We'll do some slow-mo and some stuff on that to kind of show you guys the numbers when they pop. But this is a good representation of just how easy it is just to run through content. All of the tormented bosses are one-shots, and this is a very easy build for Lilith as well. As you can see, nearly everything is a one-shot. It's a cakewalk pretty much through all content. And we're not even using Wrath yet. That was just strictly Whirlwind. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and summon Duriel real quick, just to kind of give you guys an idea. And it'll be a very quick process. As you can see, we one-shot him. It was probably less than a split second before he died. So, obviously, this build will have 0 issues with tormented bosses. We can do the same with Varshan, Grigor, and Dariel, with the exception of his one phase, and Lilith, of course, with the mechanics. But as you can see, the Girthquake is strong. Join the Girth Nation. We are open in the clan right now, where we have plenty of people, we have plenty of space. You guys are welcome to come on in. Make sure to join the Discord. Discord link will be in the description as well. Thank you so much for stopping in. If you have any other questions, drop it in the comments or jump in the Discord. See you in Sanctuary.